Boom! This is it! Bumalik na ang isa sa mga favorite, mga BTS times. No, just kidding. Ito na. Guys, welcome back dito sa joint podcast natin, Richard Hidana Podcast Fit with ex-Chris Tan. Kamusta, Chris? Good to have
Okay
you back,
naman,
friend.
Richard. Yeah, everything's good. Salamat. There's so many things happening, so many things to talk about, di ba? Kaya
I
it's always
know.
good to be able to connect with you on these things, eh.
I know, and of course, I mean, I owe you in-person meeting. I'll just tell you, like, a couple of people I interviewed earlier na talagang dapat nag-usap kami about some urgent issue. Nagawa ko lang yung isang araw lang. So definitely, God willing, gawin din natin ang mga ganyan. But before, of course, we go to our discussion today, I think both of us, we have to flex our feminist credentials. Yeah. Ayan, happy Women's Day. Yan. And looking forward, of course, Mother's Day. Ang dami pang mga pwede natin celebrate. Ikaw, kamusta, bro? Anong mensahe mo sa ating mga
Well, since it's a Women's Month, alam mo siguro ang magandang mensahe is alam ko kasi sa Pilipinas maraming mga single parents and parang 95% of all single parents are women. So shout out to all the
oh,
single
wow.
moms out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Marami It's actually, if I remember correctly, the statistic was about parang 12 or 15 million single moms. Alam mo ba kung sinabi mong 12 million? Or sabihin natin 15? You're talking about 1 in every 3 women are single moms. Can you imagine how huge that statistic is? 1 in every 3, ah. So, shout out to all the single moms out there kasi my God, you guys are doing an amazing job. Stick with it. Alam ko mahirap yung ginagawa nyo, balancing being a mother and balancing your work and providing for your family. Don't give up. Keep it up. You guys are amazing. You guys are the heroes of our country.
I mean, I 100% share, your sentiment. Actually, the other day, by the way, shout out dun sa mga nag-join sa atin sa BBC World Questions natin. In fact, one of the questions, which I found quite difficult, was etong tanong about why hanggang ngayon hindi pa legalize ang divorce and abortion, etc. And we know this disproportionately is something that, a lot of women should be heard about. Kasi sila yung na-hurt dito kung hindi sila
Yep.
binibigyan ng karapatan. Let's just be honest about this. And then there were some numbers thrown out there, like the number of out of wedlock or outside the let's just say traditional family structure people. So you just realize grabe talaga yung mga odd structural limitations na hinaharap na ating mga kababayan. And yet, I also saw kanina may data na lumabas na like more than 70% of all of the like sari-sari store, yung mga small medium enterprises, these are run by women. And maybe there's an overlap also with a lot of these women who have been taking care of their families and all. Now, actually, before going to Bitcoin, we're gonna get into trouble for this, but bakit kaya ganun no sa Pilipinas? Why are the women always taking up the cudgels? Do we have toxic masculinity problem, bro? I know this was not planned, but because I think we have to have a conversation because I don't want to be bro. I mean, of course,
Okay.
Pilipinas tayo, mahal natin ang bansa natin, but I'm comparing the Philippines to many other countries. Medyo, why are women always, they have to step up to the plate? Anong kulang sa atin mga Pilipinong lalaki? All right, I mean, to be
Alam
honest.
mo, actually, it's a vicious cycle from what I see, kasi the fact that there are a lot of single moms raising kids, and then imagine these kids, half of them are men. They grew up to be men without fathers. So wala silang father figure or somebody that they can model after. At ang nakikita nila ay ang mga father figure ay absentee fathers that are not there for them. So it creates a vicious cycle of them already repeating that pattern, unfortunately. Some will be aware and will not repeat it. But pag hindi ka aware sa ganung pattern, you tend to fall into the same trap eh. Also, the fact that kung wala kang male figure of authority na kaya mong to model after, which creates a lot of weak men. So, alam mo, as much as I'd like to blame the men and say it's toxic masculinity. Alam mo, there is a problem kasi where men don't have a safe space para makapag-usap or to be able to support each other and grow and learn. Walang ganun eh. Think about it. May mga women's groups, women's support groups. Are there any for men? Zero. So that's what gives rise to people like Duterte, mga Andrew Tates, because there's a lot of weak men right now that are not able to provide, that are not able to be responsible, and therefore they just look up to strong men to be able to take the cudgels of that responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, but this is where I'll slightly diverge from you. I mean, I absolutely agree with you na hindi mo pwede sabihin na isa lang yung cause. I mean, there's always the chicken and egg question. Pero sa tingin ko, isa sa mga manifestation of toxic masculinity is precisely what you were mentioning, which is hindi tayo incentivized bilang mga lalaki to open up. I mean, I remember one of the few times we had like heart-to-heart discussion, if I can put it, with some of my cousins, na very macho guys, is when, you know, something horrible happened in the relationship. You know, yung babae gumawa ng something terribly bad and they were like completely devastated. They couldn't put up the front na, all the pride and, you know,
Yeah.
banter and all. And then like almost magbe-breakdown na. And of all people, siguro na feel nila, eto si Richard, medyo mas matinong kausap kaysa yung mga ibang tao, baka pagtawanan ako. So doon ko na-realize, we really have this kind of a semi-toxic culture where men are disincentivized from having this kind of vocabulary of moral and emotional conversation, if I can put it that way. So for me, it's a manifestation also of a toxic masculinity. So I don't mean toxic masculinity na Duterte style, na bastos ka lang, you'll say things like that. Na, alam mo nga, but it's also yung, yung lack of this kind of a culture of opening up, expressing, showing vulnerability, being emotionally, available, if I can put it that way. Diba? I mean, I don't know. What is your take on that? Before we go back to the father figure issue, because makakonect din natin sa OFW phenomenon. There's also a sociology, right? But I just want to take your point of view on that also. Yun nga, diba? Yung vocabulary of moral, emotional conversation, vulnerability, parang disincentivized tayo sa Pilipinas.
As a matter of fact, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, all over the world,
Relatively, sorry. I just want to say relatively. Yeah, I want relatively. Sorry about.
Yeah, but at the same time, yes, as much as I do agree with you on that, I think, alam mo, let me give you an example of a conversation I had with a group of my friends, na naalala ko, when the guys and the girls were talking, a friend of ours just got married, and then ang sabi ng friend, ibig sabihin yung guy friend namin, sabi sa kanya, congratulations. Alam mo ba ibig sabihin yan? Parang happy wife, happy life. In other words, when you're married na, throw your opinion away. You have none. It's only her opinion. She's always right. You always say sorry kahit na mali siya. And it was meant as a joke. And then I realized a lot of guys have this mentality na parang ganun dapat ang buhay. And then I realized na, wait a minute, no. I think that the man has to also be respected, has to also be heard, and to be properly to be able to play their proper gender roles. And I think the lack of that delineation of gender roles, nawawala na is what's causing a lot of these problems. And in the Philippines, it's not as bad as in the US. I feel bad for a lot of males in the US, and I think that's why, I mean, this is going to be going off on a tangent, but that's why there's a lot of mass shootings in the States by a lot of these men. And it's because they're, no, na ano na yan, na-emasculate na yung karamihan sa kanila eh. So I feel that that's what's causing a lot of the problems that we see in the world. So that's my take on it eh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the one in the case of US or some of the Western countries, there's another dynamic to that, about the whole Me Too movement, cancel culture, and then, well, let's be honest, some people feel a little bit of that was abused here and there. So it created this kind of a toxic masculinity backlash, hence the rise of Andrew Tate, or popularity of people like Jordan Peterson providing, I don't know, psychological counsel, and sometimes a little bit more than that. So I'm not romanticizing what's happening in the West. And I think to a certain degree, dahil medyo Americanized, Westernized ang Pilipinas, we're seeing mga pitik-pitik here. But there's definitely peculiarities about the Philippine culture, no? But the other thing you mentioned here is the father figure. I mean, I think, I don't know, I feel blessed na even if my, dad was unwell early on. Nevertheless, he always tried to be the kind of a father figure to me, and that was very important. Also, my grandfather, etc. So always as a man, I felt the shadow of my forefathers, right, who gave me my family name, etc. Weighed heavily on my shoulders in a good way in terms of keeping me honest. So umayos ka, wag mo sirahan yung pangalan ng ano mo, di ba? So I 100% agree with you. At the same time, I think there's also this reality, and this is where unique ang Philippines, di ba? Which is ang laki ng percentage ng population natin na have to go abroad, and that inevitably had certain impact on the family structure. Now, I know complicated yan in the sense that there's also the aspect of the mother going away and then the mother being left behind, and then yung tatay, alam mo na, di ba? I mean, let's be honest, hindi natin kailangan sabihin yung mga movies ni Vilma Santos or ano, di ba? So I think the family structure also really suffered in the Philippines because of this over reliance on essentially labor export, which,
Yeah.
yes, I mean, of course, bayani sila para sa akin. At the same time, I know na marami sa ating mga OFW na kababayan, if they had the option, they would have stayed back in the country. Now, of course, there's some people, I don't know, really, really greener pastures, ibang usapan yan. But many people that were working in very difficult places in the world na walang democracy, walang rights,
Yeah.
dangerous jobs, etc. They're not doing it because they would love to go abroad. It was really out of very desperate economic conditions and also sa tingin ko maybe may kinalaman din ito dahil we pay the social cost for itong remittance industry that we created over the past 40, 50 years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then I'm hoping that one day nga that we're not exporting our labor anymore. I think that's what's causing a lot of the social ills that we're seeing is that the exportation of our labor.
Um, Now going back to this, I mean, do you see any efforts to, I mean, thankfully wala pa tayong mga Andrew Tate type. I mean, not that we need, you know what I'm saying? Or do we?
Yeah, you
I know
know,
there are like some crazy podcasters out there and all, pero I don't know. I mean, like, but do you see some sort of positive role model effect? I mean, if some people do not have matinong tatay, let's just put it that way. I think, like, how can we as older men, right? Or, like, how can we be good kuyas in that sense? Do you think that it's also incumbent upon us to step up to
yeah.
the plate? I mean, not necessarily you and me. I mean, I'm just saying in general, yung mga who were a bit luckier, who had good father figures in life, at least walang toxic masculinity, even if may pagkamacho sa buhay.
Yeah, and I think naman that what we do, for example, as vloggers and speaking our minds, does help. I noticed that the other day I was just checking my my YouTube audience, and I realized I have a very large male following. I was surprised. Parang over 60 or almost 70%, if not parang 70% nga. I don't remember the exact number, but it was surprising because it was not skewed similarly to the general population. It was definitely more skewed towards males. So I think being men that are able to speak our minds, being articulate, being critical thinkers in a way where we're able to look at things and be healthy skeptics teaches men to do the same and to learn to be able to speak up and not be afraid. Kasi when you don't have a male figure, a male parang figurehead that you can look up to or model
Role
after,
model, yeah.
you tend to look at role models like the Dutertes, the Kiboloys, and plus religion plays a big part in how Filipinos are. Remember, we're a very religious country, so we look at religious political figures in a very similar way, where they're both idolized, and there's a lot of idolatry going on, and that's kind of what replaces that looking for a father figure in a sense.
Right, right. Now, I don't know. I mean, of course, we were here celebrating the Women's Month, and I think part of that was to point out and be honest about shortcomings of men in general. And this is not a judgment on a particular person. I think we just have some cultural problems you have to deal with as Filipino males. But I mean, what is advice? I know, again, this was not supposed to be our discussion, but this is what I like about talking to people like you is I can be completely spontaneous. Is there any advice we can give to the younger men in terms of how to better value their women in their lives, whether it's their mom, it's their sister, it's their girlfriend, it's their future wife, ikaw, I mean, from your own life experiences without going hugot and all. It's like,
Yeah. So ako ang advice na mabibigay ko sa mga kalalakihan is siguraduhin nyo that you play your role as a man in a relationship. You need to learn to be courageous. When I say courageous, speak up when you need to, stand up and defend what you need to defend, whether it's your views, your perspective, and boy, be the rock that supports women. So honestly, um, if you ask women, I would bet if you ask a lot of the working women, if you had a choice to just stay home and be a mother or to take care of kids or work, I bet you maraming magsabi, I'll just rather stay home. It's not easy to be earning a living. And the problem is they're doing that because they don't have a choice. And I would urge a lot of the guys out there to please really magsipag na kayo, magtrabaho na at kumita na kayo kasi I mean, honest, I don't want to again make men sound really bad, pero pag makita mo ang daming mga tambay, mga lalaki karamihan. Bihira ka makita ng babaeng tumatambay. 'Di ba ang tambay mga lalaki, yun lang. So, sa mga kalalakihan diyan na tumatambay lang o tumatambay lang ginagawa, magtrabaho kayo kahit anong klaseng trabaho, just an honest job, earn a living, be responsible. That kind of discipline is important to develop character. That's the kind of advice I would like to give all of the men out there.
Speaking of tambay, I want to talk. I think that would be a good transition also to our next topic. Well, marami nakatambay dyan. Baka, but you never know. Nagbe-Bitcoin,
Oh.
cryptocurrency. Yeah. You never know, bro. Baka nakaiga lang yan, pero nag-check ng crypto yan.
Yeah,
Maman na yan. I'm just saying, bro, don't judge the book by
yeah.
punit-punit na shirt and labas dyan. Di ba? Mamaya, millionaire yan sa NFT yan. NFT king yung mga yan. But I completely appreciate. In fact, one thing I really like also about what you mentioned a while ago is the whole under the saya kind of discourse.
Yeah.
I think it's very toxic also in the sense that it it sets up people for a suboptimal marriage whereby
Yes.
sa bahay isa yung tyrant, and then sa labas naghahanap ng ibang interlocutor yung lalaki. Kasi kung under the saya ka lang at tapos ma-pride ka, maghahanap ka pa rin ng kausap
Yeah.
somewhere else. And you said something very well. This is about partnership. It's not going to be 100% smooth or symmetrical all the time, but you have to make it work as a partnership. I know maybe this is something new to some people kasi padre de familia and all those traditional
Yeah.
values, but also you don't want the opposite version whereby the man doesn't feel comfortable to have any kind of constructive conversation because nasa bahay si madam nang bahala, si mami nang bahala.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of problems emerge. There's no conversation, there's no partnership, and then alam mo na where things could go from there.
You know, Richard, I want to add what you said. That's really interesting. That one thing that will happen, when a man does not speak up and is not heard, and parang his voice is not valued or respected, is he will end up becoming a liability to the woman. That the woman will eventually leave the man or resent the man for being yun under the saya. At the start, parang, uy, that sounds like a great idea. Pero actually being under, the woman will eventually resent you and leave you for another man. And then it'll start that same cycle. The man will be strong. The woman, there will always be a power play, right? The man has to, and the man and the woman, that power play is important, but the man cannot just give into that power play and just succumb and be submissive to that, because women like a strong man. We see that. Uh, and a strong man means just having a foundation, becoming the wind beneath their wings, the wall that they can lean on when they need to. So the women can also be strong. Gender roles and equality means that we have different roles, but we are equal. It doesn't mean we're doing the same thing. Man work, woman work. No, pwedeng, it could also be, there are circumstances where the woman works, the man stays home. Basta there's a balance and a respect where both are equal. Hindi yung isa under the other in a very bad way.
Yeah, yun nga. For me, unhealthy yung other version. Parang overcompensation yan in terms of fighting against the patriarchy in the country. But having said that, I mean, one of the things that I always appreciate about the Philippines is if you look at our pre-colonial, pre-Hispanic culture, diba? The whole babaylan culture and all, we always had that kind of more inclusive gender equity kind of culture that unfortunately medyo nilagay ng mga Amerikano, Espanyol ang kanilang patriarchy from the West. But I think it's coming back. I mean, if you look at the strength of the feminist movement in the Philippines, you look at overall gender equity numbers, the number of Filipinos as CEOs, senators, presidents. I think there are very few countries in Asia or in the entire non-Western world who can match us. No, so they're also, so that just tells you how amazing our women are. That despite all of these structural impediments and problems, and yet they're still there. But I think that's not an excuse. Kasi the reason I'm citing is that I always hear, malakas naman mga kababayan sa atin malakas na ganun. So parang it creates a false sense of, okay na tayo Hindi It's just that they're so good that in spite of the problems they're there, but that doesn't mean there's no some fundamental problems with patriarchy, toxic masculinity, etc. But you're also right. I mean, this kind of father figure or father figures, this is something we have to work on. Kaya for me, the OFW aspect is very important. I mean, how do you make sure that you don't only provide economically, but also morally and socially for the family? And as you can see, I expressly am not referring to any religious tradition here because I'm trying to be as secular and fair as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. And And right now, the way it's going, I think it'll take time for us to be able to break that cycle. There are so many, grabe, there's so many men that go around kasi that are and sorry, let me just rephrase that. There are so few men that are capable, that are whether it's financially, whether it's being responsible, emotionally, mentally capable, na women don't have a lot of choices. And then I think that's why a lot of women end up going after the same men, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
cheating going on, and a lot of men with multiple partners. And
Ay, pag-usapan natin mga politiko na yun, mamaya. I'm just kidding.
yeah, sige. But yeah, that's my take on it.
I mean, so I realize medyo tricky tong discussion na yan kasi, you want to be honest at the same time, you don't want to be completely politically incorrect. At the same time, you want to be forward-looking. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate this. This is completely spontaneous. I didn't see this kind of discussion coming, but I just felt it's a discussion we have to have. And siguro in the future, we have to have also more conversations about this, more about Filipino culture and society, right? And some of the things that siguro they're just left unsaid, but they have to be articulated. They have to come out into discussion. Thank you so much, Chris, for that fantastic discussion. So that sets the tone for discussing itong mga tambay na mukhang tambay lang pero bilyonaryo na. Pag-usapan natin yan. Thank you, Chris.
All right.